From the campus of Volunteer State Community College, this is Inside Politics.
Hi, I'm Nancy Hauskins.
And I'm Jessica Morin. Welcome to Inside Politics.
With education being the major focus for the 105th General Assembly, our guest today is Dr. Gary Nixon, Executive Director of the Tennessee State Board of Education. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Great to be here.
Dr. Nixon, let's talk about the State Board of Education. What's the difference between your office and the State Department of Education?
Well, the State Board of Education is created legislatively in our code, and it has responsibilities to develop policies and rules that regulate the K-12 system. The Department of Education functions as the implementing arm of education to take those policies and rules and into the field and work with systems to implement them and make them happen. They have a large staff of hundreds, and we have a large staff of about 8.
Well, that certainly sums it up. How much of the policy and decision making is done by the local boards of education, and how closely do you, as the state level, work with them?
Well, let's go back and talk about the first question first. The local boards have a lot of autonomy in setting local policy within the guidelines of the state policies. Many of the state policies are minimums, and local boards then have flexibility to go on and require more, to go beyond the minimums if they so elect. Just for example, some of our schools have elected to go to a 4x4 block schedule that allows students to earn up to maximum maybe 32 credits. Well, we only require 20 for graduation. Many of those have chosen that since they, in a 6-period day, the maximum is 24. 6 fours is 24, and 8 a year. 4-H is 32, so they've chosen to go to 28 as the graduation requirement. So that's an example of how they can go beyond, but they have to at least get to 20.
Okay.
Now, in working with them, as we're developing policies, almost always we establish a task force and we bring in representatives from all 3 grand divisions and different appropriate levels from superintendents to principals to supervisors to teachers to and try to get their input and help them to formulate. As we were working with high school policy, we had about a 25-member task force that worked on that for over 2 years, and with all different levels of high school teachers, math and science, principals, supervisors of instruction, vocational education was there, superintendent or 2 was there. So
and how much do you also work with other states and on the national level?
We're a member of NASB, the National State Boards of Education, and we network through them. However, I think most of our networking with other states is simply coming from our contacting and working together. And we work with SREB, the Southern Regional Education Board in Atlanta, and we network through them to some other states. And we have a trip scheduled now for July to go to Arkansas and spend a couple of days there looking at some of the initiatives that they've begun that we're starting to think about.
In January 2000, Governor Bredesen renewed the call to improve education in a big way in the state of Tennessee. Last session, lawmakers reworked the BEP. What changes have we seen?
Well, we can tell you what they've done with some of the money. There was about roughly $200 million that flowed out. There's a category called at risk, and at risk is defined by definition from the feds as poverty, if income level. And so we tracked the free and reduced lunch children. So there was a significant pot of money that was distributed under and divided up by the number of students in poverty. And those dollars were earmarked to directly impact or improve student achievement. And systems had to be sure it was spent and through the school improvement plan on strategies that would improve the way students perform. So they've hired the graduation coaches, number of different strategies. They put in programs, interventions to work with students before and after school and on Saturday, and a lot of variety of strategies to do that. We're not far enough along to say we can show you results yet. But because we're just now into a little over halfway through that first year. It may take a while to build a pipeline and for the kids to go through that pipeline and reap the benefits of what we're doing. It's more of a long-term fix in getting the answers.
Also in 2007, Tennessee got on board with the American Diploma Project. Tell us a little bit about that and why you think it was necessary here in the state of Tennessee.
Well, the National Governors Association formed an organization called Achieve. It's a non-for-profit. They have some Bill Gates Foundation fundings and other resources, and they formed this organization to manage an effort to help states to raise the expectation and to raise achievement of students. Sometimes it's difficult to see the trees when you live in the forest. And so Achieve worked, and there were 9 states that initially affiliated with that effort, and this was in the late 90s, early 2000s. A year ago, well, let's go back to Achieve. In the American Diploma Project, Achieve worked with ACT and SAT and NAEP, the National Assessment of Education Progress, and brought in college professors, brought in employers, and worked with them, all of those groups, and developed language arts and math standards that they believe and we believe are what I like to call the gold standards. If we can accomplish these, implement them, and use them in our classes and help students to master those standards, they should leave high school prepared for whatever happens after high school. And I think the thing to keep in mind is what needs to happen after high school is that our students need to be able to find a job that will have enough salary with it that will sustain a family of 4. And I think that's a discussion we need to have as a state. If you saw yesterday's headlines, the per capita income of the growth in Tennessee was the slowest in the nation. And another article in 2 or 3 sections back equates that to the lack of a trained workforce, an educated and well-educated and well-trained workforce to do the kind of jobs that are emerging today. And so I think the American Diploma Project is right there at the right place at the right time. A lot of the planets and the stars are aligning. It's all coming together, and that's kind of, we'll talk, I hope, in a minute about a master plan, because it kind of brings those pieces into perspective of some of the things that have to happen. But to go on with the American Diploma Project, last year, a little before this time, a year ago, a little over a year, Governor Bredesen affiliated Tennessee with Achieve and the American Diploma Project. We were the 29th state. Now there are 32 states who are attempting to do what we're attempting to do. First thing, the American Diploma Project requires 4 things. Requires states to align their curriculum standards and then develop assessments to measure those standards. And then it requires students to set the graduation requirements to be sure students are taking the right courses. But while we have some rigorous courses, we can't allow them to bypass those and take a less than program of study and not be prepared. And then we'll look at down there, and then we worked on those 2 pieces. The next one will be, once we have the assessments, we want to work with the post-secondary community, particularly if we have end-of-course assessments, perhaps in Algebra 2 and English 3, to look at the results of those tests and negotiate with higher education about using that as a measure for placement into credit-bearing courses or into remedial courses or developmental courses. And that'll give those tests a lot more value, make them more meaningful to the children. And then the 4th piece is to hold schools accountable to graduate students who are prepared. And then the 3rd piece kind of steps on the post-secondary toes a little bit, because it holds post-secondary accountable to graduate the students they admit.